Well, Russia is not just using bombs and missiles against Ukraine. Its international propaganda war has been deploying half-truths, rumors, and disinformation, and language is no barrier here. With more than 500 million speakers, Spanish is a key vehicle for sympathetic Russian messaging.
6th of June 2023. The Nova Kakhovka Dam collapses in Ukraine. And videos like this one are shared and viewed thousands of times in the Spanish-speaking world. But of course, there are many fakes. This user here claims that this video shows the moment when the dam exploded. This is misleading. Yes, we see the same dam, but a reverse image search shows the video was published in November 2022. The tweet blames Ukrainians for the explosion and labels them as Nazis. Many other users use the same description, like in these tweets. Calling Ukrainians Nazis is one of the major narratives of this war by Spanish-speaking accounts spreading disinformation. Looking at content on Ukraine, Russian state-backed accounts have used the term Nazi 50% more often since the invasion. And according to experts, there's a reason for this. Also in Latin America.
It's a very quick way of generating rejection towards a government by linking it to Nazism.
Another major disinformation narrative focuses on Zelensky himself, discrediting Ukraine's president as a person and politician to legitimize the war. This video, which was viewed thousands of times, claims Zelensky wants the war to continue. As a reaction, European parliamentarians leave the session. But this claim is false. A reverse image search and the signs on the tables lead us to the origin of the video, an Austrian parliament session earlier this year. Here, politicians of the far-right Austrian FPÖ party did leave the room during a speech by Zelensky. However, he didn't say that he wanted the war to continue. But why is Zelensky often a target himself?
Personalizing Russia's war on a character and discrediting that character is an ad hominem operation that propaganda often employs.
A third major narrative focuses on influencers. They have become an important tool of Russian propaganda in Spanish. A recent study shows of the 15 most retweeted accounts surveyed, 7 were independent Spanish-speaking influencers. One such Spanish-speaking influencer is Leo Sivaya. She shares misleading claims about the war with thousands of followers. The goal? Boosting support for the Russian government. And she has been doing so throughout the course of the war. Here, she is explaining how well Russians are rebuilding Mariupol, a city in southeastern Ukraine. This claim is misleading. Sivaya doesn't mention that Russia was the one to destroy the city. She only shows how it is now building new apartments or playgrounds. And according to a study, she's not the only influencer spreading Russian narratives in Spanish.
When official information is discredited, there is an attempt to turn to other voices. Citizen voices tend to be more credible.
Half-truths, rumors, and disinformation. All in all, a way of strengthening Russian perspectives on the war in Ukraine.
The Russians have an opening there because they can dress themselves up as being different from the Western world.
And it's a significant opening. With a global reach of almost 500 million Spanish speakers, it's one of the key languages for Russian propaganda.
Yeah, and for more now, I'm joined by political scientist Marivi Martin Vasquez. She's the founder and director of ProBox. That's a Venezuelan monitoring service to combat digital misinformation. It's good to have you with us tonight. We know that politically, Russia and Venezuela are close allies. How prominent is disinformation about the war in Ukraine in Venezuela?
Thank you very much for this space. Actually, in countries like Venezuela, the current disinformation and propaganda, it's been spreading as official information. As you mentioned, these Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua are very close allies to the Russian government, and this has had an effect on the way the news and the information flows in Latin America. We have seen, for example, a day after a call between Maduro and Putin, almost 1 million tweets supporting Russia, saying literally the message said that Venezuela, the Venezuelan government, was against the disinformation spread by Western countries against Russia. And this is very alarming because it's not only manipulation of the information, it's selling lies as they were true in a language that is not being maybe studied as hard as English, or disinformation in Europe that is being hard.
Right.
It's being fight very hard, but in Spanish language we are very behind on this battle.
Yeah, it's fascinating here what you're describing. Journalists in Venezuela are agents of this Russian disinformation campaign. I know your organization, ProBox, monitors digital disinformation. Tell me, what have you observed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began?
Yeah, actually, in Venezuela, it's not only some journalists that are spreading this disinformation as official information, it's the state. All the power of the state and its institutions are spreading this information as if were the truth, as is the invasion, were this nazification process of Ukraine, and all the information we have seen from international media is not reliable. Supposedly, according to the Ministry of Communications in Venezuela, there is this huge spreader of disinformation, online disinformation, in Twitter and all the online platforms.
Ms. Vasquez, if I could just ask you, if I could just ask you, what happens in Venezuela if a journalist, an independent journalist, tries to report the truth about the war, a different narrative that does not confirm what the state is reporting? Is that journalist risking his or her job or even personal safety by doing that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Starting for, you don't have traditional media to tell this information. You only have social media platforms to denounce this, and social media platforms have another kind of issues. For example, all this false information that is being spread hugely in huge amounts of tweets by the Venezuelan regime, and it's basically polluting the conversation in social media platforms. And the goal here is not to believe in one truth. It's not believe in anything. And of course, this will have an effect in the public opinion and how these kind of issues are being understood by the population inside the country.
Marin Vasquez, we appreciate your time, valuable insights tonight. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Let's take a closer look at this with Iria Puyosa, who is from the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Welcome to DW. So as we saw in that report, there's lots of it out there, lots of disinformation out there. But how effective is it? Do people actually believe what they're being told?
Well, it's hard to assess how much people believe it, but in a direct way. But these narratives, pro-Kremlin narratives, are gaining roots in Latin America. So people continue to listen to them, continue to see them, and it became part of the background of the information. So when they get other information, they build on that previous knowledge. Since the previous knowledge is false, it's easier for new disinformation to gain support. And we are seeing with some pro-Kremlin narratives are gaining support in Latin America. Probably not the most very specific events, but the large arc, the large understanding of the issue is becoming part of the common understanding of the situation.
OK, so the more you muddy the waters, the easier it is to just throw more rubbish in there. But who is commissioning this disinformation, and who's actually doing the spreading?
Well, telling you about who is commissioning it can be hard. You need to do the documents, but we know it's part of the Russian foreign affairs policy. It includes operations in information space. They are pretty specific about giving relevance and importance to the Russian version of the issues, Ukrainian war and other issues in general, in information space worldwide, and Latin America is one of the target areas, geographic areas, and they are kind of had a whole department and the foreign affairs devoted to that, to share the information with the Russian version of the events. So we know this is an intention of Russia doing that. How is the coordination between Russian government, Russian embassies, Russian media, and these influencers you show in the video is hard to prove, but it's a alignment on the topics, the narratives, the issues they are trying to convey. So it's at least an indirect relation. We know this an intention from Russia.
Right. So you're quite convinced then that Russia is behind this, pulling the strings, because there's a line of thought that says, well, they don't even have to do that. They just have to let us think that they're doing that. They just have to let us say, well, who would gain from this? Oh, Russia. And then their job is done for them.
Well, they are pretty open about how they deploy this, that narrative. Some of the narratives you mentioned in the video, like the neo-Nazi, Ukrainians being neo-Nazi, came directly from a statement from the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Department of Latin America. Then you see those replicated by their embassies and by their media, RT, and other media in which they are aligned in Latin America. And then after that fierce deployment of their operations from official sources, you see that getting traction with the influencers at Latin American media who is sympathized with Russia narratives, replicating this, and some political leaders in the region also replicating this. But you see how the narratives usually came from official sources in Russia. The specific videos, specific pieces maybe came from influencers, maybe came from a small media in the region, but the overall narrative, the arc, it came from official media, so it's hard to say they don't have anything to do with that.
And those influencers are quite interesting. What do they get out of it? Are they pursuing their own anti-Western ideology, or are they being paid?
I guess it's a combination of both. I had looking at a few cases. It looks like it's a combination of both. They kind of share that anti-imperialistic, meaning anti-US view. They receive some monetary incentives. Sometimes it can be a good amount of money for Latin American standards for spreading that. But in most cases I have seen it's a combination of both. They really had the anti-US and anti-Euro sentiment, anti-liberal democracy sentiment, I would say. And they also had profit from amplifying these narratives.
Good talking to you. Thank you for joining us. Iria Puyosa from the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab.